Welcome to this powerful English lesson for adult learners. Today, you'll learn 187 advanced adverbs to make your English richer, sharper, and more natural. This is a lesson you can save, revisit, and learn from again and again. Let's get started. Categorically. Categorically. Meaning, in a definite and unambiguous way. In a definite and unambiguous way. She categorically denied telling anyone about our conversation. She categorically denied telling anyone about our conversation. Pointedly. Pointedly, meaning, in a deliberate way intended to make a particular message or criticism clear. In a deliberate way intended to make a particular message or criticism clear. He pointedly asked why nobody had bothered to tell him sooner. He pointedly asked why nobody had bothered to tell him sooner. Tentatively. Tentatively, meaning, in a hesitant or cautious way because you are unsure. In a hesitant or cautious way because you are unsure. I tentatively suggested meeting somewhere quieter so we could actually talk. I tentatively suggested meeting somewhere quieter so we could actually talk. Begrudgingly. Begrudgingly, meaning, unwillingly, often while showing annoyance or reluctance. Unwillingly, often while showing annoyance or reluctance. He begrudgingly admitted that my suggestion had actually worked. He begrudgingly admitted that my suggestion had actually worked. Implicitly. Implicitly, meaning, in a way that communicates something without stating it directly. In a way that communicates something without stating it directly. She implicitly suggested that I wasn't experienced enough for the role. She implicitly suggested that I wasn't experienced enough for the role. Bluntly. Bluntly, meaning, in a very direct way, without trying to make something sound more pleasant. In a very direct way, without trying to make something sound more pleasant. He bluntly told me that the whole idea needed rethinking. He bluntly told me that the whole idea needed rethinking. Evasively. Evasively, meaning, in a way that avoids giving a clear or direct answer. In a way that avoids giving a clear or direct answer. She responded evasively whenever I asked what had happened that evening. She responded evasively whenever I asked what had happened that evening. Reassuringly. Reassuringly, meaning, in a way that removes someone's doubts or worries. In a way that removes someone's doubts or worries. He reassuringly told us there was plenty of time to catch the train. He reassuringly told us there was plenty of time to catch the train. Dismissively. Dismissively, meaning, in a way that shows you consider something unimportant or unworthy of attention. in a way that shows you consider something unimportant or unworthy of attention. She dismissively waved away my concerns and immediately changed the subject. She dismissively waved away my concerns and immediately changed the subject. Emphatically, meaning in a forceful way that makes your meaning or opinion very clear. In a forceful way that makes your meaning or opinion very clear. He emphatically insisted that he never agreed to those arrangements. He emphatically insisted that he'd never agreed to those arrangements. Diplomatically, meaning in a careful way that avoids offending people or creating unnecessary conflict. In a careful way that avoids offending people or creating unnecessary conflict. I diplomatically suggested that we might want to consider a different approach. I diplomatically suggested that we might want to consider a different approach. Inadvertently, meaning accidentally and without intending to. Accidentally and without intending to. I inadvertently mentioned the surprise party while talking to his sister. I inadvertently mentioned the surprise party while talking to his sister. Cryptically, meaning in a mysterious way that is difficult to understand or interpret. In a mysterious way that is difficult to understand or interpret. She cryptically said that everything would make sense by tomorrow. She cryptically said that everything would make sense by tomorrow. Sheepishly, meaning in an embarrassed way because you know you have done something foolish or wrong. In an embarrassed way because you know you have done something foolish or wrong. He sheepishly admitted that he'd left his wallet at home again. He sheepishly admitted that he'd left his wallet at home again. Nonchalantly, meaning in a relaxed and unconcerned way, especially when a reaction might be expected. In a relaxed and unconcerned way, especially when a reaction might be expected. She nonchalantly mentioned that she'd bumped into my ex at the weekend. She nonchalantly mentioned that she'd bumped into my ex at the weekend. Assertively, meaning in a confident and direct way that expresses your needs or opinions without aggression. In a confident and direct way that expresses your needs or opinions without aggression. She assertively explained why she wasn't prepared to accept the original offer. She assertively explained why she wasn't prepared to accept the original offer. Concisely, meaning in a clear and brief way without unnecessary words. In a clear and brief way without unnecessary words. He concisely explained what had gone wrong and what we needed to do next. He concisely explained what had gone wrong and what we needed to do next. Arguably, arguably, meaning in a way that can be reasonably be supported or defended. In a way that can be reasonably be supported or defended. This is arguably the nicest place we've stayed in for years. This is arguably the nicest place we've stayed in for years. Presumably, presumably, meaning used to say that you think something is likely based on what you know. Used to say that you think something is likely based on what you know. They've turned all the lights off, so presumably everyone has gone home. They've turned all the lights off, so presumably everyone has gone home. Inherently, inherently, meaning in a way that exists as a natural or essential part of something. In a way that exists as a natural or essential part of something. There's nothing inherently wrong with changing your mind once you know more. There's nothing inherently wrong with changing your mind once you know more. Objectively, objectively, meaning in a way that considers facts rather than personal feelings or opinions. In a way that considers facts rather than personal feelings or opinions. Objectively, the second apartment gives us much better value for money. Objectively, the second apartment gives us much better value for money. Subjectively, subjectively, meaning in a way that is influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions. In a way that is influenced by personal feelings, tastes, or opinions. Subjectively, I prefer the older design because it has far more character. Subjectively, I prefer the older design because it has far more character. Intuitively, intuitively, meaning through instinctive understanding rather than deliberate reasoning. Through instinctive understanding rather than deliberate reasoning. I intuitively knew something was wrong the moment she walked through the door. I intuitively knew something was wrong the moment she walked through the door. Instinctively, instinctively, meaning as a natural and immediate reaction without conscious thought. As a natural and immediate reaction without conscious thought. I instinctively checked my pocket when I realised my bag was still open. I instinctively checked my pocket when I realised my bag was still open. Justifiably, justifiably, meaning for a good or understandable reason. For a good or understandable reason. She was justifiably annoyed after waiting nearly an hour without an explanation. She was justifiably annoyed after waiting nearly an hour without an explanation. Mistakenly, mistakenly, meaning because of an incorrect belief or understanding. Because of an incorrect belief or understanding. I mistakenly assumed breakfast was included when I booked the room. I mistakenly assumed breakfast was included when I booked the room. Erroneously, erroneously, meaning in a way that is incorrect because of a mistaken belief or information. In a way that is incorrect because of a mistaken belief or information. The bill erroneously showed that we had ordered 3 bottles instead of 1. The bill erroneously showed that we had ordered 3 bottles instead of 1. Plausibly. Plausibly, meaning in a way that seems reasonable or believable. In a way that seems reasonable or believable. He could plausibly have missed the message if his phone was switched off all day. He could plausibly have missed the message if his phone was switched off all day. Ostensibly. Ostensibly, meaning according to what appears or is stated, although the real situation may be different. According to what appears or is stated, although the real situation may be different. He came over ostensibly to return my charger, but stayed for nearly 3 hours. He came over ostensibly to return my charger, but stayed for nearly 3 hours. Consciously. Consciously, meaning deliberately and with awareness of what you are doing. Deliberately and with awareness of what you are doing. I consciously stopped checking my phone whenever somebody was talking to me. I consciously stopped checking my phone whenever somebody was talking to me. Subconsciously. Subconsciously, meaning without being fully aware that you are doing or thinking something. Without being fully aware that you are doing or thinking something. I'd subconsciously started avoiding that street because it reminded me of the accident. I'd subconsciously started avoiding that street because it reminded me of the accident. Retrospectively. Retrospectively, meaning when considering something after it has already happened. When considering something after it has already happened. Retrospectively, booking such an early flight probably wasn't our smartest decision. Retrospectively, booking such an early flight probably wasn't our smartest decision. Fundamentally. Fundamentally, meaning in a way that concerns the most basic or important aspects of something. In a way that concerns the most basic or important aspects of something. I fundamentally disagree with the idea that being busy automatically means being productive. I fundamentally disagree with the idea that being busy automatically means being productive. Rationally. Rationally, meaning in a way that is based on reason rather than emotion. In a way that is based on reason rather than emotion. Rationally, I knew there was nothing to worry about, but I still felt nervous. Rationally, I knew there was nothing to worry about, but I still felt nervous. Reluctantly. Reluctantly, meaning unwillingly or with hesitation. Unwillingly or with hesitation. I reluctantly agreed to go out, but I ended up having a brilliant evening. I reluctantly agreed to go out, but I ended up having a brilliant evening. Genuinely. Genuinely, meaning in a sincere and truthful way, rather than pretending. in a sincere and truthful way, rather than pretending. I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed spending time there. I was genuinely surprised by how much I enjoyed spending time there. Wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly, meaning with complete sincerity, enthusiasm, or support. With complete sincerity, enthusiasm, or support. I wholeheartedly supported her decision to take some time away from work. I wholeheartedly supported her decision to take some time away from work. Visibly. Visibly, meaning in a way that can clearly be noticed from someone's appearance or behaviour. In a way that can clearly be noticed from someone's appearance or behaviour. He was visibly relieved when they finally confirmed that everything had been sorted. He was visibly relieved when they finally confirmed that everything had been sorted. Inwardly. Inwardly, meaning in your thoughts or feelings without showing them to other people. In your thoughts or feelings without showing them to other people. I inwardly groaned when he suggested watching the same film again. I inwardly groaned when he suggested watching the same film again. Bitterly. Bitterly, meaning with intense disappointment, resentment, or unhappiness. With intense disappointment, resentment, or unhappiness. She bitterly regretted turning down the opportunity when it first came along. She bitterly regretted turning down the opportunity when it first came along. Resentfully. Resentfully, meaning in a way that shows anger about being treated unfairly. In a way that shows anger about being treated unfairly. He resentfully agreed to cover another shift after everyone else had gone home. He resentfully agreed to cover another shift after everyone else had gone home. Apprehensively. Apprehensively, meaning with anxiety or uncertainty about what might happen. With anxiety or uncertainty about what might happen. I apprehensively opened the email, expecting to find some bad news. I apprehensively opened the email, expecting to find some bad news. Uneasily. Uneasily, meaning in a worried, uncomfortable, or uncertain way. In a worried, uncomfortable, or uncertain way. She glanced uneasily towards the door when she heard someone outside. She glanced uneasily towards the door when she heard someone outside. Warily. Warily, meaning cautiously because you are uncertain about something or suspect there may be a problem. Cautiously because you are uncertain about something or suspect there may be a problem. I warily accepted the offer because it sounded almost too good to be true. I warily accepted the offer because it sounded almost too good to be true. Grudgingly. Grudgingly, meaning unwillingly, especially when admitting something you would rather not admit. Unwillingly, especially when admitting something you would rather not admit. I grudgingly accepted that he had been right about the hotel all along. I grudgingly accepted that he had been right about the hotel all along. Defiantly. Defiantly, meaning in a way that openly resists authority, criticism, or opposition. In a way that openly resists authority, criticism, or opposition. She defiantly refused to apologise for something she hadn't done. She defiantly refused to apologise for something she hadn't done. Indignantly. Indignantly, meaning with anger or annoyance at something you consider unfair or insulting. With anger or annoyance at something you consider unfair or insulting. He indignantly asked why he was being blamed for somebody else's mistake. He indignantly asked why he was being blamed for somebody else's mistake. Wistfully. Wistfully, meaning with gentle sadness or longing for something you would like or miss. With gentle sadness or longing for something you would like or miss. She smiled wistfully as we talked about the summers we used to spend there. She smiled wistfully as we talked about the summers we used to spend there. Eagerly. Eagerly, meaning with strong interest, enthusiasm, or desire. With strong interest, enthusiasm, or desire. I eagerly accepted the chance to spend a few extra days by the coast. I eagerly accepted the chance to spend a few extra days by the coast. Hesitantly. Hesitantly, meaning in an uncertain or nervous way, especially before doing or saying something. In an uncertain or nervous way, especially before doing or saying something. He hesitantly reached for the bill before asking whether we could split it. He hesitantly reached for the bill before asking whether we could split it. Jubilantly. Jubilantly, meaning in a way that shows great happiness, especially after a success. In a way that shows great happiness, especially after a success. They jubilantly celebrated when they heard that their offer on the house had been accepted. They jubilantly celebrated when they heard that their offer on the house had been accepted. Conscientiously. Conscientiously, meaning in a careful and responsible way, with a strong desire to do something properly. In a careful and responsible way, with a strong desire to do something properly. She conscientiously checks everything before locking up the shop each evening. She conscientiously checks everything before locking up the shop each evening. Considerately. Considerately, meaning in a way that shows care for other people's feelings, needs, or comfort. In a way that shows care for other people's feelings, needs, or comfort. He considerately lowered the music when he realised our neighbours had gone to bed. He considerately lowered the music when he realised our neighbours had gone to bed. Tactfully. Tactfully, meaning in a careful way that avoids upsetting or embarrassing someone. In a careful way that avoids upsetting or embarrassing someone. She tactfully changed the subject when she noticed I was becoming uncomfortable. She tactfully changed the subject when she noticed I was becoming uncomfortable. Scrupulously, scrupulously, meaning with great care to do something correctly, fairly, or according to the rules. With great care to do something correctly, fairly, or according to the rules. He scrupulously keeps his personal spending separate from the business accounts. He scrupulously keeps his personal spending separate from the business accounts. Dutifully, dutifully, meaning in a way that shows you are doing something because it is expected or required. In a way that shows you are doing something because it is expected or required. I dutifully filled in every section of the form before handing it back. I dutifully filled in every section of the form before handing it back. Obediently, obediently, meaning in a way that follows an instruction or request without resisting. In a way that follows an instruction or request without resisting. He obediently moved his car after the neighbour asked him to clear the driveway. He obediently moved his car after the neighbour asked him to clear the driveway. Stubbornly, stubbornly, meaning in a determined way that refuses to change despite persuasion or difficulty. In a determined way that refuses to change despite persuasion or difficulty. She stubbornly refused to replace the old sofa even though it was falling apart. She stubbornly refused to replace the old sofa even though it was falling apart. Recklessly, recklessly, meaning without considering the possible danger or consequences. Without considering the possible danger or consequences. He recklessly spent nearly all his savings within a few months. He recklessly spent nearly all his savings within a few months. Brazenly, brazenly, meaning in a very bold and shameless way. In a very bold and shameless way. Someone brazenly walked to the front of the queue and acted as though nothing was wrong. Someone brazenly walked to the front of the queue and acted as though nothing was wrong. Deliberately, deliberately, meaning intentionally rather than accidentally. Intentionally rather than accidentally. She deliberately left her phone upstairs so she could enjoy dinner without checking it. She deliberately left her phone upstairs so she could enjoy dinner without checking it. Knowingly, knowingly, meaning while being fully aware of what you are doing or of the true situation. While being fully aware of what you are doing or of the true situation. He knowingly booked the cheaper room even though it didn't include breakfast. He knowingly booked the cheaper room even though it didn't include breakfast. Unwittingly, unwittingly, meaning without realizing or intending what you are doing. Without realizing or intending what you are doing. I unwittingly sat in someone else's reserved seat until they politely pointed it out. I unwittingly sat in someone else's reserved seat until they politely pointed it out. Methodically, methodically, meaning in an organised and systematic way. In an organised and systematic way. We methodically went through every cupboard until we finally found the missing keys. We methodically went through every cupboard until we finally found the missing keys. Indiscriminately, indiscriminately, meaning without carefully choosing or distinguishing between different people or things. Without carefully choosing or distinguishing between different people or things. He was adding things to his basket indiscriminately without even checking the prices. He was adding things to his basket indiscriminately without even checking the prices. Selflessly, selflessly, meaning with greater concern for other people's needs than your own. With greater concern for other people's needs than your own. She selflessly gave up her weekend to help her friend move into the new flat. She selflessly gave up her weekend to help her friend move into the new flat. Presumptuously, presumptuously, meaning in an overly confident way that assumes you have a right to do something. In an overly confident way that assumes you have a right to do something. He presumptuously invited several friends over without asking whether I minded. He presumptuously invited several friends over without asking whether I minded. Surreptitiously, surreptitiously, meaning secretly, especially because you do not want other people to notice. Secretly, especially because you do not want other people to notice. She surreptitiously checked the bill to make sure nobody had been charged twice. She surreptitiously checked the bill to make sure nobody had been charged twice. Meticulously, meticulously, meaning with extremely careful attention to every small detail. With extremely careful attention to every small detail. She meticulously checked the booking details before paying for the flights. She meticulously checked the booking details before paying for the flights. Painstakingly, painstakingly, meaning with great care and effort over a considerable amount of time. With great care and effort over a considerable amount of time. We painstakingly removed the old wallpaper without damaging the wall underneath. We painstakingly removed the old wallpaper without damaging the wall underneath. Haphazardly, haphazardly, meaning in a disorganised way, without proper planning or order. In a disorganised way, without proper planning or order. He'd haphazardly packed everything into boxes without bothering to label them. He'd haphazardly packed everything into boxes without bothering to label them. Sporadically, sporadically, meaning occasionally and at irregular intervals rather than continuously. Occasionally and at irregular intervals rather than continuously. The heating worked sporadically throughout the weekend, which made the house freezing at night. The heating worked sporadically throughout the weekend, which made the house freezing at night. Seamlessly, seamlessly, meaning smoothly and successfully, without noticeable problems or interruptions. Smoothly and successfully, without noticeable problems or interruptions. We moved from one hotel to the other seamlessly while our room was being repaired. We moved from one hotel to the other seamlessly while our room was being repaired. Effortlessly, effortlessly, meaning in a way that appears to require little or no effort. In a way that appears to require little or no effort. She effortlessly switched between English and Spanish throughout the conversation. She effortlessly switched between English and Spanish throughout the conversation. Single-handedly, single-handedly, meaning without help from anyone else, without help from anyone else. He single-handedly cleared the entire garage while everyone else was at work. He single-handedly cleared the entire garage while everyone else was at work. Systematically, systematically, meaning according to a careful, organised plan or method. According to a careful, organised plan or method. I systematically deleted everything I hadn't used in more than a year. I systematically deleted everything I hadn't used in more than a year. Rigorously, rigorously, meaning in an extremely thorough, careful or demanding way. In an extremely thorough, careful or demanding way. We rigorously compared the different options before deciding where to stay. We rigorously compared the different options before deciding where to stay. Frantically, frantically, meaning in a hurried, anxious or uncontrolled way. In a hurried, anxious or uncontrolled way. I frantically searched through my bag when I couldn't find my passport. I frantically searched through my bag when I couldn't find my passport. Relentlessly, relentlessly, meaning in a continuous and determined way that does not ease or stop. In a continuous or determined way that does not ease or stop. The rain fell relentlessly for most of the weekend, so we barely went outside. The rain fell relentlessly for most of the weekend, so we barely went outside. Discreetly, discreetly, meaning carefully and unobtrusively so that you do not attract attention. Carefully and unobtrusively so that you do not attract attention. I discreetly moved the empty glass away before someone knocked it onto the floor. I discreetly moved the empty glass away before someone knocked it onto the floor. Gingerly, gingerly, meaning very carefully, especially because something might be painful, fragile, or dangerous. Very carefully, especially because something might be painful, fragile, or dangerous. He gingerly lowered himself onto the chair after hurting his back. He gingerly lowered himself onto the chair after hurting his back. Deftly, deftly, meaning skillfully and quickly, especially when using your hands or handling a situation. Skillfully and quickly, especially when using your hands or handling a situation. She deftly caught the glass before it slid off the edge of the table. She deftly caught the glass before it slid off the edge of the table. Laboriously, laboriously, meaning with considerable time and effort because something is difficult. With considerable time and effort because something is difficult. We laboriously carried the old wardrobe downstairs without scratching the walls. We laboriously carried the old wardrobe downstairs without scratching the walls. Vigorously, vigorously, meaning with a great deal of physical energy, force, or enthusiasm. With a great deal of physical energy, force, or enthusiasm. He vigorously scrubbed the stain, but it still wouldn't come out. He vigorously scrubbed the stain, but it still wouldn't come out. Precipitously, precipitously, meaning very suddenly and sharply, especially when describing a fall, decline, or steep movement. Very suddenly and sharply, especially when describing a fall, decline, or steep movement. The path dropped precipitously once we got beyond the last row of houses. The path dropped precipitously once we got beyond the last row of houses. Cordially, cordially, meaning in a warm, friendly and polite way. In a warm, friendly and polite way. We chatted cordially for a few minutes, even though we'd never met before. We chatted cordially for a few minutes, even though we'd never met before. Amicably, amicably, meaning in a friendly and peaceful way, especially after a disagreement or separation. In a friendly and peaceful way, especially after a disagreement or separation. They ended the relationship amicably and still occasionally meet for coffee. They ended the relationship amicably and still occasionally meet for coffee. Affectionately, affectionately, meaning in a way that shows fondness, warmth, or love. In a way that shows fondness, warmth, or love. She affectionately refers to that little cafe as her second home. She affectionately refers to that little cafe as her second home. Graciously, graciously, meaning in a kind, courteous and pleasant way, especially in a difficult situation. In a kind, courteous and pleasant way, especially in a difficult situation. He graciously accepted my apology and said there were no hard feelings. He graciously accepted my apology and said there were no hard feelings. Courteously, courteously, meaning in a polite and respectful way. In a polite and respectful way. She courteously held the door open while we carried our bags inside. She courteously held the door open while we carried our bags inside. Differentially, differentially, meaning in a way that shows great respect for someone's authority, experience, or status. In a way that shows great respect for someone's authority, experience, or status. He spoke differentially to the owner, but was much more relaxed with everyone else. He spoke differentially to the owner, but was much more relaxed with everyone else. Condescendingly, condescendingly, meaning in a way that suggests you believe you are more intelligent or important than someone else. In a way that suggests you believe you are more intelligent or important than someone else. She condescendingly explained something I'd already told her I understood. She condescendingly explained something I'd already told her I understood. Patronisingly, patronisingly, meaning in an apparently kind way that actually shows you consider someone less capable or knowledgeable. In an apparently kind way that actually shows you consider someone less capable or knowledgeable. He patronisingly praised me for managing a task I'd been doing for years. He patronisingly praised me for managing a task I'd been doing for years. Contemptuously, contemptuously, meaning in a way that shows strong disrespect or dislike. In a way that shows strong disrespect or dislike. She contemptuously dismissed the situation without even considering it properly. She contemptuously dismissed the suggestion without even considering it properly. Disparagingly, disparagingly, meaning in a way that expresses a negative or belittling opinion about someone or something. In a way that expresses a negative or belittling opinion about someone or something. He spoke disparagingly about his old neighbourhood after moving somewhere more expensive. He spoke disparagingly about his old neighbourhood after moving somewhere more expensive. Mockingly, mockingly, meaning in a way that makes fun of someone, often unkindly. In a way that makes fun of someone, often unkindly. She mockingly copied the face I make whenever I'm trying to concentrate. She mockingly copied the face I make whenever I'm trying to concentrate. Aloofly, aloofly, meaning in a distant or emotionally detached way that can seem unfriendly. In a distant or emotionally detached way that can seem unfriendly. He behaved rather aloofly at first, but became much friendlier once we got talking. He behaved rather aloofly at first, but became much friendlier once we got talking. Companionably, companionably, meaning in a friendly and comfortable way, especially when spending relaxed time together. In a friendly and comfortable way, especially when spending relaxed time together. We walked companionably along the beach without feeling the need to talk constantly. We walked companionably along the beach without feeling the need to talk constantly. Conspiratorially, conspiratorially, meaning in a secretive or playful way that suggests you and another person share private information. In a secretive or playful way that suggests you and another person share private information. She leaned towards me conspiratorially and told me what they were planning. She leaned towards me conspiratorially and told me what they were planning. Magnanimously, magnanimously, meaning in a generous and forgiving way, especially towards someone you could reasonably criticise. In a generous and forgiving way, especially towards someone you could reasonably criticize. He magnanimously congratulated the colleague who had beaten him to the promotion. He magnanimously congratulated the colleague who had beaten him to the promotion. Solicitously, solicitously, meaning in a way that shows particular concern for someone's comfort or well-being. In a way that shows particular concern for someone's comfort or well-being. She solicitously asked whether I needed anything after the long journey. She solicitously asked whether I needed anything after the long journey. Ostentatiously, ostentatiously, meaning in a deliberately noticeable way, intended to impress other people. In a deliberately noticeable way, intended to impress other people. He ostentatiously left his new car keys on the table where everyone could see them. He ostentatiously left his new car keys on the table where everyone could see them. Incrementally, incrementally, meaning in a series of small increases or changes rather than all at once. In a series of small increases or changes rather than all at once. We've been improving the house incrementally whenever we have some money spare. We've been improving the house incrementally whenever we have some money to spare. Progressively, progressively, meaning gradually developing or changing over a period of time. Gradually developing or changing over a period of time. The evenings became progressively colder as we moved further into autumn. The evenings became progressively colder as we moved further into autumn. Exponentially, exponentially, meaning at an increasingly rapid rate. At an increasingly rapid rate. The amount of storage we need has grown exponentially over the past few years. The amount of storage we need has grown exponentially over the past few years. Markedly, markedly, meaning in a way that is clearly noticeable or significant. In a way that is clearly noticeable or significant. The service has improved markedly since they brought in a new manager. The service has improved markedly since they brought in a new manager. Appreciably, appreciably, meaning by an amount large enough to be noticed or recognised. By an amount large enough to be noticed or recognised. The flat became appreciably quieter once the upstairs neighbours moved out. The flat became appreciably quieter once the upstairs neighbours moved out. Marginally, marginally, meaning only slightly, by a very small amount. Only slightly, by a very small amount. The second hotel was marginally cheaper, but the rooms were much smaller. The second hotel was marginally cheaper, but the rooms were much smaller. Dramatically, dramatically, meaning suddenly or noticeably to a very great degree. Suddenly or noticeably to a very great degree. My energy levels improved dramatically once I stopped staying up so late. My energy levels improved dramatically once I stopped staying up so late. Irreversibly, irreversibly, meaning in a way that cannot be changed back to its previous state. in a way that cannot be changed back to its previous state. The old building was irreversibly damaged after years of neglect. The old building was irreversibly damaged after years of neglect. Inexorably, inexorably, meaning in a way that continues and cannot easily be stopped or prevented. In a way that continues and cannot easily be stopped or prevented. The cost of renovating the house kept rising inexorably as more problems emerged. The cost of renovating the house kept rising inexorably as more problems emerged. Steadily, steadily, meaning at a regular, continuous, and relatively consistent rate. At a regular, continuous, and relatively consistent rate. We've steadily reduced our monthly spending without making any drastic changes. We've steadily reduced our monthly spending without making any drastic changes. Noticeably, noticeably, meaning in a way that is easy enough to observe or recognise. In a way that is easy enough to observe or recognise. The town has become noticeably busier since we last visited. The town has become noticeably busier since we last visited. Disproportionately, disproportionately, meaning to an extent that is too large or too small in relation to something else. To an extent that is too large or too small in relation to something else. That tiny spare room takes up a disproportionately large amount of our heating bill. That tiny spare room takes up a disproportionately large amount of our heating bill. Organically, organically, meaning in a natural and gradual way rather than through deliberate or forced planning. In a natural and gradual way rather than through deliberate or forced planning. Our group of friends grew organically as people started bringing others along. Our group of friends grew organically as people started bringing others along. Radically, radically, meaning in a way that causes a major and fundamental change. In a way that causes a major and fundamental change. Working from home radically changed how I organise my day. Working from home radically changed how I organise my day. Imperceptibly, imperceptibly, meaning so gradually or slightly that the change is almost impossible to notice. So gradually or slightly that the change is almost impossible to notice. The light faded imperceptibly until we suddenly realised how dark it had become. The light faded imperceptibly until we suddenly realised how dark it had become. Irretrievably, irretrievably, meaning in a way that makes something impossible to recover or restore. In a way that makes something impossible to recover or restore. Some of the photos were irretrievably lost when the old laptop stopped working. Some of the photos were irretrievably lost when the old laptop stopped working. Materially, materially, meaning to a significant or meaningful degree. To a significant or meaningful degree. The extra bedroom materially increased the value of the property. The extra bedroom materially increased the value of the property. Pragmatically, pragmatically, meaning in a practical way that focuses on what will actually work. In a practical way that focuses on what will actually work. We pragmatically decided to stay another night rather than drive home in terrible weather. We pragmatically decided to stay another night rather than drive home in terrible weather. Judiciously, judiciously, meaning with careful thought and good judgment. With careful thought and good judgment. She judiciously saved some of her holiday budget in case anything unexpected came up. She judiciously saved some of her holiday budget in case anything unexpected came up. Arbitrarily, arbitrarily, meaning without a clear, fair or logical reason. Without a clear, fair or logical reason. The landlord seemed to have arbitrarily decided which tenants could use the parking spaces. The landlord seemed to have arbitrarily decided which tenants could use the parking spaces. Strategically, strategically, meaning in a carefully planned way intended to achieve a particular result. In a carefully planned way intended to achieve a particular result. We strategically booked our flights mid-week when the fares were considerably lower. We strategically booked our flights mid-week when the fares were considerably lower. Decisively, decisively, meaning in a confident and definite way, without unnecessary hesitation. In a confident and definite way, without unnecessary hesitation. She acted decisively and cancelled the card as soon as she realised it was missing. She acted decisively and cancelled the card as soon as she realised it was missing. Prematurely, prematurely, meaning before the appropriate or expected time. Before the appropriate or expected time. We prematurely assumed the problem was fixed and packed away all the tools. We prematurely assumed the problem was fixed and packed away all the tools. Needlessly, needlessly, meaning without any good reason or necessity. Without any good reason or necessity. I needlessly worried about the journey when everything turned out to be straightforward. I needlessly worried about the journey when everything turned out to be straightforward. Inexplicably, inexplicably, meaning in a way that cannot easily be explained or understood. In a way that cannot easily be explained or understood. My phone inexplicably stopped charging even though it had been working perfectly that morning. My phone inexplicably stopped charging even though it had been working perfectly that morning. Invariably, invariably, meaning always or almost always, especially as a typical consequence or pattern. Always or almost always, especially as a typical consequence or pattern. Whenever we leave late, we invariably get stuck in traffic. Whenever we leave late, we invariably get stuck in traffic. Inevitably, inevitably, meaning in a way that cannot realistically be avoided or prevented. In a way that cannot realistically be avoided or prevented. If we keep putting the repair off, it will inevitably become more expensive. If we keep putting the repair off, it will inevitably become more expensive. Consequently, consequently, meaning as a result of something that happened previously. As a result of something that happened previously. We missed the last train and consequently had to find somewhere to stay overnight. We missed the last train and consequently had to find somewhere to stay overnight. Unnecessarily, unnecessarily, meaning to a greater extent than is needed or when there is no need at all. To a greater extent than is needed or when there is no need at all. The instructions made a fairly simple process unnecessarily complicated. The instructions made a fairly simple process unnecessarily complicated. Counterproductively, counterproductively, meaning in a way that produces the opposite of the result you intended. In a way that produces the opposite of the result you intended. He counterproductively kept checking the time, which only made him feel more anxious. He counterproductively kept checking the time, which only made him feel more anxious. Proactively, proactively, meaning by taking action before a problem or need arises. By taking action before a problem or need arises. I proactively renewed my passport months before we had any travel plans. I proactively renewed my passport months before we had any travel plans. Short-sightedly, short-sightedly, meaning in a way that fails to consider the likely long-term consequences. In a way that fails to consider the likely long-term consequences. We short-sightedly chose the cheapest option without considering how much maintenance it would need. We short-sightedly chose the cheapest option without considering how much maintenance it would need. Fortuitously, fortuitously, meaning in a way that happens by chance and produces a fortunate result. In a way that happens by chance and produces a fortunate result. Fortuitously, someone cancelled just as we arrived, so they managed to fit us in. Fortuitously, someone cancelled just as we arrived, so they managed to fit us in. Unavoidably, unavoidably, meaning in a way that cannot be prevented because of the circumstances. In a way that cannot be prevented because of the circumstances. Our journey was unavoidably delayed when the road ahead was closed. Our journey was unavoidably delayed when the road ahead was closed. Intermittently, intermittently, meaning at irregular intervals, with periods when something stops before starting again. At irregular intervals, with periods when something stops before starting again. It rained intermittently all afternoon, but we still managed to spend a few hours outside. It rained intermittently all afternoon, but we still managed to spend a few hours outside. Periodically, periodically, meaning from time to time, usually at intervals. From time to time, usually at intervals. I periodically clear out my wardrobe rather than waiting until there's no room left. I periodically clear out my wardrobe rather than waiting until there's no room left. Habitually, Habitually, meaning regularly or repeatedly as a habit. Regularly or repeatedly as a habit. He habitually leaves everything until the last minute and then wonders why he's stressed. He habitually leaves everything until the last minute and then wonders why he's stressed. Incessantly, incessantly, meaning continuously and often annoyingly, without seeming to stop. Continuously and often annoyingly, without seeming to stop. The neighbour's dog barked incessantly for nearly an hour while they were out. The neighbour's dog barked incessantly for nearly an hour while they were out. Perpetually, perpetually, meaning continually or so frequently that something seems never-ending. Continually or so frequently that something seems never-ending. My brother is perpetually losing his keys and asking everyone else to help find them. My brother is perpetually losing his keys and asking everyone else to help find them. Simultaneously, simultaneously, meaning at exactly the same time. At exactly the same time. We both reached for the last slice of pizza simultaneously and burst out laughing. We both reached for the last slice of pizza simultaneously and burst out laughing. Concurrently, concurrently, meaning during the same period of time as something else. During the same period of time as something else. They were renovating the kitchen and bathroom concurrently, which made living there rather chaotic. They were renovating the kitchen and bathroom concurrently, which made living there rather chaotic. Subsequently, subsequently, meaning afterwards, especially following something previously mentioned. Afterwards, especially following something previously mentioned. We complained about the room and were subsequently moved to one overlooking the sea. We complained about the room and were subsequently moved to one overlooking the sea. Thereafter, thereafter, meaning after that point in time. After that point in time. I started setting 2 alarms and thereafter never missed another early train. I started setting 2 alarms and thereafter never missed another early train. Beforehand, beforehand, meaning earlier than a particular event or action. Earlier than a particular event or action. We checked the menu beforehand because one of our friends has several food allergies. We checked the menu beforehand because one of our friends has several food allergies. Belatedly, belatedly, meaning later than expected or appropriate. Later than expected or appropriate. I belatedly realised that I'd been carrying his umbrella instead of mine all afternoon. I belatedly realised that I'd been carrying his umbrella instead of mine all afternoon. Momentarily, momentarily, meaning for a very short period of time. For a very short period of time. The lights went out momentarily before everything came back on. The lights went out momentarily before everything came back on. Indefinitely, indefinitely, meaning for an unknown or unlimited period of time. For an unknown or unlimited period of time. We couldn't keep staying with friends indefinitely, so we started looking for another flat. We couldn't keep staying with friends indefinitely, so we started looking for another flat. Provisionally. Provisionally, meaning for the present with the possibility of being changed later. For the present with the possibility of being changed later. We've provisionally arranged to meet on Saturday, depending on what everyone else is doing. We've provisionally arranged to meet on Saturday, depending on what everyone else is doing. Chronologically. Chronologically, meaning according to the order in which events happen. According to the order in which events happen. I arranged the old photographs chronologically so we could see how much everyone had changed. I arranged the old photographs chronologically so we could see how much everyone had changed. Successively. Successively, meaning one after another in a particular sequence. One after another in a particular sequence. We tried 3 different cafes successively before finding one that still had a table. We tried 3 different cafes successively before finding one that still had a table. Recurrently. Recurrently, meaning repeatedly, especially when something returns after periods of absence. Repeatedly, especially when something returns after periods of absence. The same problem has occurred recurrently whenever the weather turns particularly cold. The same problem has occurred recurrently whenever the weather turns particularly cold. Substantially. Substantially, meaning by a large or significant amount. By a large or significant amount. The final bill was substantially higher than the estimate they originally gave us. The final bill was substantially higher than the estimate they originally gave us. Overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly, meaning to a very great degree or by a very large majority. To a very great degree or by a very large majority. The feedback from everyone who came to the event was overwhelmingly positive. The feedback from everyone who came to the event was overwhelmingly positive. Predominantly. Predominantly, meaning mainly or for the most part. Mainly or for the most part. The neighbourhood is predominantly residential, although there are a few lovely cafes nearby. The neighbourhood is predominantly residential, although there are a few lovely cafes nearby. Comparatively. Comparatively, meaning when compared with something else, to a relative degree. When compared with something else, to a relative degree. The second half of the journey was comparatively easy once the traffic had cleared. The second half of the journey was comparatively easy once the traffic had cleared. Exceptionally. Exceptionally, meaning to an unusually high degree. To an unusually high degree. The hotel was exceptionally quiet considering how close it was to the city centre. The hotel was exceptionally quiet considering how close it was to the city centre. Profoundly. Profoundly, meaning to a very great or deep extent, especially in effect, feeling, or influence. To a very great or deep extent, especially in effect, feeling, or influence. Living abroad for a year profoundly changed the way I think about home. Living abroad for a year profoundly changed the way I think about home. Exceedingly, exceedingly, meaning to an unusually great degree, to an unusually great degree. Finding somewhere affordable at such short notice proved exceedingly difficult. Finding somewhere affordable at such short notice proved exceedingly difficult. Negligibly, negligibly, meaning by such a small amount that it has little or no practical importance. By such a small amount that it has little or no practical importance. The cheaper route was only negligibly shorter, so we took the more scenic one. The cheaper route was only negligibly shorter, so we took the more scenic one. Immeasurably, immeasurably, meaning to an extent so great that it cannot reasonably be measured. To an extent so great that it cannot reasonably be measured. Having someone experienced there made the whole situation immeasurably easier. Having someone experienced there made the whole situation immeasurably easier. Infinitely, infinitely, meaning to an extremely great degree, especially when making a strong comparison. To an extremely great degree, especially when making a strong comparison. The new mattress is infinitely more comfortable than the one we had before. The new mattress is infinitely more comfortable than the one we had before. Unduly, unduly, meaning to a greater degree than is reasonable, appropriate, or necessary. To a greater degree than is reasonable, appropriate, or necessary. I wouldn't be unduly concerned unless the problem starts happening more frequently. I wouldn't be unduly concerned unless the problem starts happening more frequently. Decidedly, decidedly, meaning noticeably and unmistakably, especially when emphasizing a particular quality. Noticeably and unmistakably, especially when emphasizing a particular quality. The atmosphere became decidedly awkward when nobody volunteered to pay the extra charge. The atmosphere became decidedly awkward when nobody volunteered to pay the extra charge. Notably, notably, meaning to a degree that is particularly worthy of attention. To a degree that is particularly worthy of attention. The town was notably quieter than it had been when we visited the previous summer. The town was notably quieter than it had been when we visited the previous summer. Strikingly, strikingly, meaning in a way that is unusually noticeable or impressive. In a way that is unusually noticeable or impressive. The two apartments were strikingly similar despite being in completely different buildings. The two apartments were strikingly similar despite being in completely different buildings. Vastly, vastly, meaning by a very great amount or degree. By a very great amount or degree. The journey home was vastly easier once we avoided the motorway altogether. The journey home was vastly easier once we avoided the motorway altogether. Infinitesimally, infinitesimally, meaning by an extremely small amount. By an extremely small amount. The gap between the two prices was infinitesimally small once all the fees were included. The gap between the two prices was infinitesimally small once all the fees were included. Considerably, considerably, meaning by a noticeably large amount or degree. By a noticeably large amount or degree. The restaurant was considerably busier than we'd expected for a Monday evening. The restaurant was considerably busier than we'd expected for a Monday evening. Unequivocally, unequivocally, meaning in a completely clear and definite way, leaving no room for doubt. In a completely clear and definite way, leaving no room for doubt. She unequivocally told me that she had no intention of moving abroad. She unequivocally told me that she had no intention of moving abroad. Tacitly, tacitly, meaning without saying something directly, but in a way that shows agreement or understanding. Without saying something directly, but in a way that shows agreement or understanding. By saying nothing when the plan was announced, he tacitly accepted the arrangement. By saying nothing when the plan was announced, he tacitly accepted the arrangement. Overtly, overtly, meaning openly and in a way that is easy to notice. Openly and in a way that is easy to notice. He wasn't overly rude, but you could tell he didn't want us there. He wasn't overtly rude, but you could tell he didn't want us there. Covertly, covertly, meaning secretly or in a concealed way. Secretly or in a concealed way. She covertly checked the time while pretending to listen to the entire story. She covertly checked the time while pretending to listen to the entire story. Expressly, expressly, meaning clearly and deliberately, especially when stating a wish, instruction, or condition. Clearly and deliberately, especially when stating a wish, instruction, or condition. I expressly asked them not to leave the parcel outside while we were away. I expressly asked them not to leave the parcel outside while we were away. Ruefully, ruefully, meaning with a mixture of regret, embarrassment, and humour. With a mixture of regret, embarrassment, and humour. He ruefully admitted that he'd ignored the directions and driven 20 miles the wrong way. He ruefully admitted that he'd ignored the directions and driven 20 miles the wrong way. Acutely, acutely, meaning to a very strong or intense degree, especially regarding awareness or feeling. To a very strong or intense degree, especially regarding awareness or feeling. I became acutely aware that everyone else in the room had suddenly gone quiet. I became acutely aware that everyone else in the room had suddenly gone quiet. Nominally, nominally, meaning officially or in name, although the reality may be somewhat different. Officially or in name, although the reality may be somewhat different. The event was nominally free, but almost everything inside cost extra. The event was nominally free, but almost everything inside cost extra. Loosely, loosely, meaning in a way that is not exact, strict, or precisely defined. In a way that is not exact, strict, or precisely defined. The film is loosely based on something that happened in the director's childhood. The film is loosely based on something that happened in the director's childhood. Purportedly. Purportedly, meaning according to what is claimed, although the claim may not be true. According to what is claimed, although the claim may not be true. The supplement purportedly improves concentration, but I couldn't find much evidence for it. The supplement purportedly improves concentration, but I couldn't find much evidence for it. Demonstrably. Demonstrably, meaning in a way that can clearly be shown or proved. In a way that can clearly be shown or proved. The new system is demonstrably faster than the one we were using before. The new system is demonstrably faster than the one we were using before. Perceptibly. Perceptibly, meaning by an amount that is noticeable, although it may be small. By an amount that is noticeable, although it may be small. The temperature dropped perceptibly once the sun disappeared behind the hills. The temperature dropped perceptibly once the sun disappeared behind the hills. Unreservedly. Unreservedly, meaning completely and without hesitation or restriction. Completely and without hesitation or restriction. I unreservedly recommend the little restaurant we found near the harbour. I unreservedly recommend the little restaurant we found near the harbour. Aptly. Aptly, meaning in a way that is particularly suitable or appropriate. In a way that is particularly suitable or appropriate. The cafe was aptly named The Hideaway because we nearly walked straight past it. The cafe was aptly named The Hideaway because we nearly walked straight past it. Duly. Duly, meaning as expected, required or appropriate. As expected, required or appropriate. I filled in the form, sent it back, and duly received confirmation the following morning. I filled in the form, sent it back, and duly received confirmation the following morning. Allegedly. Allegedly, meaning according to what has been claimed without the claim necessarily being proven. According to what has been claimed, without the claim necessarily being proven. The shortcut allegedly saves 10 minutes, although it has never worked for me. The shortcut allegedly saves 10 minutes, although it has never worked for me. Discernibly. Discernibly, meaning in a way that can be noticed or recognised, especially with some attention. In a way that can be noticed or recognised, especially with some attention. Her mood improved discernibly once she realised the problem could be fixed. Her mood improved discernibly once she realised the problem could be fixed.